Hi, I'm Dave Mountain, and I'm an email marketing consultant with Marketing and Advertising Direction. Today, we're going to talk about email attrition and also how to limit it. First point is, what is attrition? Not a word that everybody knows. Attrition, in a geologic standpoint, is the amount of erosion. So the waves come crashing against the cliff. The cliff is eventually worn down by the force of the waves and the rocks. It can be a slow process or it can be a fast process. Let's talk about why it matters in email. In email, attrition is defined as the percentage of a list that becomes unmailable. It can become unmailable through a variety of different reasons. We'll go into each of these in turn in the upcoming slides. Attrition metrics are often discounted or overlooked or thought as unremarkable because they don't seem to be changing very much. In general, you are not going to discover your attrition rate until you send your email out. That's not ideal. Ideally, you would avoid some of the problem emails before you send to them and consequently be able to limit your attrition and improve your sender reputation in inboxing. The thing to know about email is it's always degrading. Your list is always going away. People perish. People leave the market segment. People change their email addresses. Email service providers fail. Subject lines go wrong. It's an easy channel to get wrong. It's an easy channel to have attrition occur and creep up. As such, you are always needing to recover more of your list through new list acquisition, but you can limit email attrition. Some of it is inevitable. Spikes, own goals, not so much. There are things you can do to limit the trade-offs, and there are things that you're going to do even though you know it's going to spike attrition because of business reasons. Know the limits so that the business reasons don't always predominate. It's not always the best answer of, this is a great offer, mail it to everyone. Look at the amount of sales we generated. Mailing to everyone worked. Could you have generated 98% of those sales by mailing to 50% of the people? Possibly. The sweet spot of the list is probably smaller than you think. If someone has not opened an email from you in 180 days, there is a very good chance that email address is compromised or worthless. If they haven't opened it in more than 365 days, there's a reasonable chance that mailing to it will actually harm you because the email address has possibly even become a spam trap. In general, email works really well to keep engaged people engaged. If people have shown that they don't want to be engaged with, respect their wishes. Stop emailing them. Allow for folks to come in and out of your process easily. It's very important. The first clue to attrition is what's known as a soft bounce. So the email is unable to be delivered, but it's possibly a temporary problem. Maybe their inbox is full. Maybe they're sending out auto replies that say they're on vacation. Maybe the server downtime's an issue or the message size is too large, though frankly I don't see that very often. In general, data drives soft bounce. So if you're emailing and seeing low soft bounce all the time, great, don't worry about it. But if you're mailing, say, the first day after a long weekend and you're seeing a ton of soft bounce, maybe don't mail the first day after a long weekend. Maybe at the very least, email in the afternoon once someone's had the chance to clear out some of it. There's not a whole lot you can do to avoid soft bounce because these addresses worked until they didn't. And as such, list cleanses aren't going to find trouble spots with soft bounces. They're just going to be early warning signs of problems. The nice thing about a soft bounce is it's not fatal. You may have just caught someone at the wrong time or wrong connection or whatever. And if you mail to them again, it might be fine with the right day parting, different subject line, whatever. The down part is they didn't get your email, and if it happens 3 times in sequence, that becomes a hard bounce. A hard bounce is an email that cannot be delivered for a permanent reason. These could include that the email address is invalid, there's a formatting error, there's an issue with their domain name, there's blocked email servers, etc. You can set up feedback loops to get some of the reasons for these hard bounces. And if it's becoming a significant and persistent issue, I recommend that you do. In general, a feedback loop is not that hard to set up and not that difficult to eye up because the reasons that you're going to get from it are pretty consistent. In general, you limit hard bounce by making sure that you're not sending to an invalid new address, and you change the tactics that possibly generated a lot of the soft bounces. If you continue to mail to a hard bounce email address, your sender reputation and your deliverability are going to go down quickly. This is feature, not bug. Some people believe that you should keep a hard bounce email address, that the user may contact you at some point and you would want to have their old profile. Others will look at that and say that's a danger to have that around because it might get mailed at some point by accident and it's a drain on our server. Your call whether to keep it or not. Moving on. An unsubscribe is when a user has proactively clicked to say, stop sending me this. Some unsubscribe is inevitable. If you have none, that's actually a problem because no one unsubscribes from spam. They mark it as spam or they mark it as phishing, and an ESP will look at an unsubscribe rate of 0 and say, this is nonsense. No one who ever signs up for this ever wanted to stop getting it. So a little unsubscribe is realistic. Some of it's inevitable. If you're 0, it's actually sometimes not a positive. Now, the trouble for unsubscribe is this can be an easy mistake. And it can be an easy mistake, especially on mobile and especially due to changes that Gmail and Yahoo and others have created in the last couple of years where they've insisted on unsubscribe in the header. And that's an easy click to make. I've done it myself and not even realize that you've unsubscribed from something. If a user unsubscribes from an unscrupulous emailer, it tells that unscrupulous emailer, oh, this is a live person, keep sending them more mail, just send it from a different domain or with a different offer. So on some level, if someone is unsubscribing from you, they think you're legitimate enough to honor the request. Respect that. Honor the request quickly. If you continue to send to unsubscribe users, they're going to get angrier with you, and your sender reputation is going to continue to be a problem. Sometimes somebody really is unsubscribing because they are voting with their feet. They are saying, you're sending me too much, this content stinks, your offers aren't good, whatever. So you need to track your unsubscribe rate and see if there is a trend or if there's a focus. We sent them this kind of content and our unsubscribe rate spiked. Maybe send less of that kind of content moving forward. It's also important to understand that the email channel does not live in a vacuum. You need to check year over year on this. Most email senders see spikes in unsubscribe rate in Q3 and Q4 every year. And they do that because the world sends too much email and people get frustrated and start clicking unsubscribe emotionally on lots of things. So make sure your trend is real before saying, hey, we've got a serious problem with unsubscribe. A spam complaint is basically the harder version of an unsubscribe. The user not only said, you sent this to me and I didn't give you my email address and I didn't want you to, I don't want this anymore. They're saying that you got my email address badly. You didn't take me off the list when I asked to be taken off the list. If the unsubscribe is, don't send this to me anymore, the spam complaint is, no one should get this because the people who send this are terrible people. Unsubscribe can be emotional, it can be heated. Most email service providers take these extremely seriously. Spam complaints are more serious than unsubscribe. If you're generating more than one of these per 1,000 email sends, you're over limit to some email service providers, and you're going to start seeing your inboxing and your sender reputation suffer. Prioritize removal of any spam complaint the same way that you prioritize removal of any unsubscribe. You can also generally limit these by cutting down on your active user list, not mailing to people who haven't opened an email for the next number of days. You can also, and this is a very easy trick, make sure that you are encouraging replies directly to the send and monitoring it, and maybe even having a human sending back some stuff to that user base. Nobody replies to spam. No one says this is spam or this is a spammer if you can actually get on a chat, as it were, and engage with a human. Next up is the phishing complaint. Phishing complaint is not only is this a spammer, but he's a criminal, or she is a criminal, or they are a criminal. Report filed by an individual user that says there's criminal intent behind this email address. It is hard to tell exactly how seriously email service providers take phishing complaints. It is unrealistic to think that they're going to drop everything and investigate these as to being actual phishing complaints as opposed to somebody being emotionally annoyed. But if you're generating a lot of them, probably you are going to get investigated at some point. They may pass it on to an authority. As with spam, you can't take a lot of these. More than 1 out of 1,000 is a problem. In general, phishing complaints are even more obviously done by the user. This is not something that you click on inadvertently. You have to click on this and then confirm that yes, you really meant it. This is a phishing complaint. So this is a real red flag. If you're running into these, deeply change your tactics, change your list, change your content, change your creative, change. This is not stuff to mess around with. So how does one avoid attrition? Well, you can't totally avoid it, but you can limit it. Cull and segment your lists. Clean any new names before you add them. Do this either by a service or even do it manually. Just check to see if there's obvious typos in some of these. You're going to be glad that you caught them. Avoid positive-only KPI thinking. Don't just think, oh, how much money did we make? How many opens did we get? How many clicks did we generate? You got to look at the attrition too. You can generate a lot of positive KPI with tactics that will also generate a lot of negative KPI. Know what's going on. Check the negative engagement numbers. Limit your frequency. Most people oversend. Use optimal day parting. Can't say this enough. Don't send at round numbers and quarter hours. You're running into the same traffic as automated segments and lazy email marketers. Send on organic times. Test your subject lines. Run them through a pre-send and mid-send, which is to say cut the list in some portion and then run to the better subject line with the back. And consider the use of a seed list. This is an expensive thing from time to time. It may just be something that you can generate internally to 10 different devices and get a sense of what's inboxing and what's not. The biggest way to avoid attrition is to maintain a prospect-first mindset. If you're sending emails because it's important to our brand, is it? Or are you just telling something that an internal marketer wants to have told? Is your email too long? Is it too deep in the weeds? Does it deal with a subject matter that only you really care about that much? Is it actively non-engaging to the users? Are you just speaking to the choir? If you're just speaking to the choir, maybe don't send it. Maintain a prospect-first mindset, and that is the best way to avoid attrition. Summing up on attrition, it's inevitable, but spikes in it and mistakes that cause it to spike are not inevitable. Learn from your data. Look at a lot of your data. If you haven't learned anything from your data recently, look at your data. I guarantee you there's something you can find there. And if you're not learning anything from your data, then your testing's not good enough. You're not testing strong enough measures, or you're just throwing A/Bs against the wall rather than if-thens. If you need help in determining how to better do any of this stuff, Marketing and Advertising Direction is here to assist. My phone number is 609-955-1514. Email address is davidlmountain@gmail.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find the site there. Happy emailing.